The Collection. When Gods Make Mistakes. Commander Zexhai adjusted his ceremonial armor one final time before stepping onto the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion. 23 years of faithful service to the Valorian Empire had earned him this command, and he wore that responsibility like the polished metals on his chest. The ship hummed with quiet efficiency around him, its massive bulk cutting through space toward the small blue world designated as Target Sigma 471. The Valorian Empire had perfected the art of galactic governance through 10,000 years of careful expansion and cultural preservation. Every species they encountered was catalogued, studied, and integrated into their vast bureaucratic machine. It was a system that had brought peace to 100 worlds, though peace was perhaps too generous a word. Compliance was more accurate. Status report. Navigation Officer Vextar, Zexhai commanded, settling into his command chair. We are approaching the Luna settlement, Commander. The human orbital facility appears to be operating within normal parameters. No defensive systems detected, no military vessels in the vicinity. Zexhai nodded, reviewing the mission parameters on his personal display. Cultural Preservation Protocol 7 was routine work. Every few cycles, the Empire would select promising specimens from developing worlds for study and integration into their cultural archives. The humans had been classified as Category 7 Developing World, which meant minimal strategic value but interesting biological and social characteristics worth preserving. Dr. Elena Vasquez was conducting her third-year astronomy class in Luna Settlement's observation dome when the Imperial ships appeared. 47 children between the ages of 8 and 14 pressed their faces against the reinforced windows, watching in wonder as the massive alien vessels materialized from hyperspace. Elena's stomach dropped like a stone, but she kept her voice steady. Children, please move away from the windows and form two lines by the emergency exit. 10-year-old Marcus Kim raised his hand. Dr. Vasquez, are those the aliens from the Holovids? The ones with the big ships? Yes, Marcus. Now please, everyone needs to follow emergency procedures. But even as she spoke, Elena knew it was too late. The Imperial vessels were already deploying boarding pods, their trajectory making it clear that Luna Station was their destination. Her daughter Sophia stood among the children, her dark eyes wide with curiosity rather than fear. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as she activated her communication device. Station Control, this is Dr. Vasquez in Observation 7. We have Imperial vessels approaching with what appears to be boarding intent. Request immediate evacuation protocols. Captain Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the comm system, tense but controlled. Elena, maintain your position. Do not attempt to resist or evacuate. This is a direct order from Earth Command. Elena stared at the device in her hand. Sarah, there are children here, 47 of them. I know. Follow the protocols we discussed. Keep them calm and together. The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud that echoed through the station. Elena gathered the children around her, noting how they instinctively moved closer together, their faces turning to her for guidance. She had been preparing for this moment for 3 years, ever since Earth Command had briefed all settlement leaders on Imperial contact protocols. The waiting was finally over. Commander Zexhai led the boarding party personally, as was proper for a cultural preservation mission. The human facility was surprisingly well constructed for a species barely 2 centuries into space travel. Clean corridors, efficient life support systems, and remarkably advanced computers for their technological level. The human adults they encountered offered no resistance. In fact, their behavior struck Zexhai as oddly cooperative. A tall woman with graying hair and the bearing of a military officer approached him as his team secured the central hub. I am Captain Sarah Chen, commanding officer of Luna Settlement Alpha 7. I assume you're here under Cultural Preservation Protocol. Zexhai studied her carefully. Most species either cowered in fear or raged in futile defiance when the Empire arrived. This human's calm acceptance was unusual. You are correct, Captain Chen. We require 47 specimens from your juvenile population for cultural study and preservation. The children in the observation dome are already assembled and prepared for transport. Dr. Vasquez will accompany them to ensure their comfort during the journey. Something in the human's tone made Zexai pause. That will not be necessary. Our facilities are adequate for the specimen's needs. Captain Chen's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. I see. And when might we expect their return? Cultural preservation specimens are maintained permanently in Imperial facilities. They receive excellent care and contribute to the greater understanding of galactic diversity. For a moment, the silence stretched between them like a held breath. Then Captain Chen nodded slowly. I understand. You should know that we've already transmitted notification of this collection to our homeworld and all human settlements. Standard procedure. Of course, Zexai replied, though he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The collection itself proceeded with disturbing efficiency. The human children were remarkably well behaved, following their teacher's instructions without panic or resistance. Dr. Vasquez, a woman with kind eyes and steady hands, spoke to each child individually, offering comfort and reassurance. Remember what we talked about in class, she told a small girl with blonde pigtails. Humans adapt. We survive. No matter where you go or what happens, you carry Earth with you. Zexai watched this interaction with growing unease. The woman's words seemed to carry more weight than simple comfort. There was something deliberate about the way she spoke, as if she were giving final instructions rather than temporary reassurance. As his teams loaded the children into transport pods, Zexai noticed the adults' faces. They weren't displaying the grief and rage he expected from parents watching their offspring taken away. Instead, they wore expressions of grim determination, as if they were watching the opening moves of a game whose rules only they understood. The most disturbing moment came as the last child was secured for transport. A boy of perhaps 12 years looked directly at Zexai with startling blue eyes and said, "You should know that my mom keeps her promises. All human moms do." Before Zexai could ask what that meant, Dr. Vasquez placed a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's enough, Tommy. Save your strength." The Imperial commander filed the interaction away for later analysis. There had been something almost pitying in the child's expression, as if he felt sorry for Zexai rather than fearing him. The journey back to the Imperial capital took 18 standard days. Zexai found himself checking on the human children more frequently than protocol required. They had adapted to their confinement with remarkable resilience, creating games and stories to pass the time. Dr. Vasquez had been allowed to remain with them, and she used every moment to teach them about Imperial culture and survival techniques. "Why do you prepare them for permanent captivity?" Zexai asked her during one of his visits to the holding area. Dr. Vasquez looked up from a lesson she was conducting on alien biology. Because children need to understand their situation to cope with it. They need to know that being taken doesn't mean being broken. You speak as if you have experience with such things. Every human has experience with survival, Commander. It's what we do. On the 15th day of their journey, something unprecedented happened. The ship's communication array went completely silent. Not damage, not malfunctioning. Simply receiving no transmissions whatsoever from human space. Zexai ordered a full diagnostic, but the equipment was functioning perfectly. The silence was coming from the source. "Perhaps their communication systems have failed," suggested his communications officer. But Zexai remembered the calm certainty in Captain Chen's eyes and the pity in that human child's expression. This silence felt different. It felt like the quiet before a storm. On the 17th day, his deep space scanners detected something impossible. Every major shipping lane that connected human space to the rest of the galaxy had gone dark. No merchant traffic, no diplomatic vessels, no communication relays. It was as if humanity had simply disappeared. Dr. Vasquez noticed his growing concern. "You're worried about the silence," she observed during his evening inspection. "Should I be?" The human woman considered this carefully. Commander, has your empire ever dealt with a species that didn't fight back immediately when their children were threatened? Sci-Fi thought about it. No. Most species either submit completely or resist futilely. Then you've never encountered anything like us. She turned back to the children, who were listening to her every word with focused attention. Children, let's practice the song we learned about patience, the one about waiting for the right moment. As 47 young voices rose in harmony, singing words in a human language that Zexay's translator couldn't interpret, the Imperial commander felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. 3 days later, the Eternal Dominion arrived at the Imperial capital to find Admiral Corvesh waiting in the docking bay with an expression of barely controlled panic. Commander Zexai, report to Imperial Command immediately upon docking. Priority Alpha. What about the specimens? Secure them in the Cultural Preservation Facility as planned. But Commander, we need to discuss your mission. Urgently. As Zexai watched the human children being escorted away, he caught Dr. Vasquez's eye one final time. She nodded to him with what looked almost like approval, as if he had passed some test he hadn't known he was taking. Take care of yourself, Commander, she said quietly. I have a feeling the next few days are going to be very interesting for all of us. The reckoning, when silence becomes thunder. Admiral Corvesh's office had been designed to intimidate. The walls displayed holographic trophies from 100 conquered worlds, and the massive windows overlooked the Imperial capital's sprawling cityscape. But when Commander Zexai entered that morning, the Admiral looked anything but intimidating. He looked terrified. Zexai, in your 23 years of service, have you ever encountered a situation where an entire species simply vanished? The commander considered this carefully. No, Admiral. Even the most reclusive civilizations maintain some form of interstellar communication. Then perhaps you can explain this. Corvesh activated a holographic display that showed the current galactic communication grid. Where human space should have been, there was nothing but empty silence. 72 hours ago, every human settlement, every research station, every diplomatic outpost went completely dark. No distress signals, no final transmissions, no explanation. Zexai studied the display with growing unease. Equipment failure. Impossible. We're talking about 300 separate installations across 57 star systems. They can't all have failed simultaneously. Corvesh paused, his expression grim. There's more. Show him the Outer Rim reports. Lieutenant Torvin. A young officer stepped forward, his hand shaking slightly as he accessed the tactical display. Sir, our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual activity in the Kepler and Vega sectors. Unidentified vessels moving in formation patterns we don't recognize. How many vessels? Zexai asked. That's difficult to determine, sir. Our scanners keep losing track of them. It's as if they're using some form of stealth technology we've never encountered. Admiral Corvesh activated another display, this one showing shipping manifests and commercial traffic logs. For the past 6 months, human merchant vessels have been conducting unusual cargo transfers, medical supplies, raw materials, and what our customs officials logged as agricultural equipment being moved to Outer Rim territories. Agricultural equipment. That's what their manifests said. But the power consumption signatures suggest otherwise. Corvesh's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Zexai, I think we may have made a serious mistake. Before the commander could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the Imperial Command Center. Red emergency lights bathed the room as tactical officers rushed to their stations. Report, Corvesh barked. Sir, we have contacts. Multiple unidentified vessels emerging from hyperspace around all major Imperial worlds simultaneously. The main display lit up with tactical data that made no sense. Massive vessels, easily the size of Imperial dreadnoughts, were materializing in the space around every significant Imperial installation. But they weren't attacking. They were just waiting. How many ships? Zexai demanded. Current count is over 400 capital-class vessels, sir, and they're still arriving. Admiral Corvish stared at the display in disbelief. That's impossible. Our intelligence reports indicate that humanity has a total military capacity of perhaps 50 ships suitable for interstellar combat. Sir, the communications officer's voice cracked with strain. We're receiving a transmission. It's being broadcast to every Imperial world simultaneously. Put it through. The holographic display cleared to show a human male in simple military attire. He appeared to be in his 40s, with graying hair and the kind of calm confidence that comes from absolute certainty. When he spoke, his voice carried across the galaxy with perfect clarity. I am Captain Marcus Stone, speaking for the United Human Colonial Defense Force. 72 hours ago, Imperial forces removed 47 children from Luna Settlement Alpha 7 under what you call Cultural Preservation Protocol. We are here to discuss their immediate return. Corvish found his voice. This is Admiral Corvish of the Imperial Fleet. I don't know who you think you are, but you are vastly outnumbered. The Empire has maintained peace in this galaxy for 10,000 years. Captain Stone's expression didn't change. Admiral, you have maintained compliance through superior firepower and the threat of overwhelming force. But you've never faced a species that was preparing for this conversation before you even knew we existed. What do you mean? We've been watching your empire for nearly a century, Admiral. We've studied your expansion patterns, your military doctrine, your cultural preservation protocols. We knew that eventually you would come for our children. So we prepared. The tactical display updated to show the true scope of the human fleet. What had appeared to be merchant vessels were revealing themselves as heavily armed warships. Mining operations were deploying defensive platforms that could level continents. Even civilian transports were shedding their disguises to reveal military-grade weapon systems. This is impossible, Corvish whispered. Our intelligence reports were based on what we wanted you to see, Stone replied calmly. Admiral, every human settlement you've observed over the past 50 years has been a carefully constructed performance. We've shown you exactly what you expected to see from a primitive species: scattered colonies, limited military capability, and peaceful acceptance of imperial authority. Zexhai stepped forward, his mind racing. The silence. Your entire species went dark simultaneously. That level of coordination requires planning. Stone nodded. The moment our children were taken, every human installation in known space activated Protocol 7, complete communication blackout, and defensive posture. We've been preparing for this scenario since the day we learned of your empire's existence. Admiral Corvish activated the fleet-wide communication system. All Imperial forces prepare for immediate military response. These humans are clearly hostile and... Admiral, Stone interrupted, his voice still perfectly calm. Before you issue any orders you might regret, please check your tactical displays. The main screen updated to show the current position of every Imperial fleet in known space. Each one was surrounded by human vessels that had seemingly appeared from nowhere. More disturbing still, the energy signatures suggested these weren't just warships. They were weapons platforms capable of sterilizing entire worlds. You see, Admiral, we didn't come here to negotiate from a position of weakness. We came here to explain why you're going to return our children. Are you threatening the Empire? Corvish's voice was hoarse with disbelief. Stone considered this question carefully. No, Admiral. We're explaining a fact. Humanity has one non-negotiable principle. You do not take our children. Ever. Under any circumstances. For any reason. And if we refuse... Captain Stone's expression remained calm, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Then you'll discover why every species in this galaxy should be grateful that humans generally prefer peace to war. The silence stretched across the communication channel as the implications sank in. Zexhai found himself thinking about Dr. Vasquez's words, about the strange calm of the human adults, about the pity in that child's eyes. They knew, he said quietly. When we took the children, they knew this was going to happen. Stone nodded. Every human parent teaches their children the same lesson, Commander. No matter what happens, no matter how far you're taken or how long you're gone, remember that someone is coming for you. Always. Admiral Corvash slumped in his chair, the weight of 10,000 years of imperial supremacy crumbling around him. What do you want? The return of 47 children to Luna Settlement Alpha 7, unharmed and unaltered. Full disclosure of any data collected during their captivity, and a formal guarantee that the Empire will never again target human civilians under any protocol or pretense. And if we agree to these terms, then this conversation ends, our fleets withdraw, and the galaxy continues as it was. We have no interest in conquest or revenge. Admiral, we just want our children back. Corvash looked around his command center at officers who had served the Empire faithfully for decades, now staring at tactical displays that showed their complete vulnerability. The Empire has never negotiated under threat before. The Empire has never threatened human children before, Stone replied. Admiral, you have 12 hours to reach a decision. I suggest you use that time wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial Command Center in stunned silence. Zexhai looked at the tactical display, showing the human fleet positions, and realized that he was witnessing the end of an age.
Admiral, he said quietly, I recommend we return the children. Corvash nodded slowly. Issue the order. All Imperial forces are to maintain defensive positions only. No aggressive actions. And get me a direct line to the Cultural Preservation Facility. 8 hours later, Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in Luna Settlement's docking bay, watching as an Imperial transport ship approached. But this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her stood every human adult on the station, and beyond them, visible through the observation windows, the dark shapes of human warships maintaining their silent vigil. The transport docked with the same mechanical precision as before, but when the airlock opened, it was Commander Zexhai who stepped through, followed by 47 human children and Dr. Vasquez. Elena rushed forward to embrace her daughter, tears streaming down her face. Around them, parents were reunited with their children in scenes of joy and relief that seemed to warm the entire station. Dar. Vasquez, Zexhai said quietly, I need to ask you something. She looked up from her daughter's embrace. Yes, Commander. When I took your children, you weren't surprised. You were prepared. Dr. Vasquez nodded. We've been preparing for this possibility since the day we learned of your empire's existence. Every human settlement has emergency protocols. Every parent knows their role. The silence, the fleet coordination, the hidden military capacity, how long have you been planning this? 87 years, she replied simply. Ever since the first human diplomats met with imperial representatives and learned about cultural preservation protocols. We realized that eventually, you would come for our children. So we got ready. Zexhai looked around at the reunited families, at the careful organization, at the silent ships maintaining their protective watch. Your entire species coordinated this response. Every human settlement, every colony, every outpost. When someone threatens our children, we don't argue about politics or borders or jurisdiction. We simply respond. And now? Dr. Vasquez smiled, the same kind expression she had worn when teaching the children about survival. Now we go back to our normal lives. The ships will withdraw, the communication channels will reopen, and everything will return to the way it was. Unless, of course, someone else decides to threaten our children. As Commander Zexhai prepared to leave Luna Settlement for the final time, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The Empire would continue, the peace would hold, but everyone now knew that there were limits to imperial power. The humans had taught them that some lines should never be crossed, and some species were far more dangerous when cornered than anyone had imagined. As his ship departed, Zexhai watched the human fleet slowly fade back into apparent normalcy. Cargo ships resumed their schedules, communication channels reopened, and the settlements returned to their peaceful routines. But now he knew the truth. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their hidden fleets or their advanced technology. It was their absolute, unwavering commitment to protecting their own. They had turned love into a form of warfare, and it was the most terrifying thing he had ever witnessed. The galaxy would remember the day the silence ended. And it would never again underestimate the species that had learned to weaponize the simple promise that no parent makes lightly: someone is always coming for you. The end.